With us, we have Margie Bissinger, and we are going to be talking about bone health, healthy bones, how to improve bone health. And so, as usual, I am going to dive into Margie's bio. And so, Margie Bissinger, again, she's a physical therapist, integrative health coach, and happiness trainer. And Margie has over 25 years of experience helping people with osteoporosis and osteopenia improve their bone health. Margie is the author of Osteoporosis, an exercise guide. She oversees all the osteoporosis initiatives in the state of New Jersey as a physical therapy representative to the New Jersey Interagency Council on Osteoporosis. And Margie also teaches an online 6-week program, Happy Bones, Happy Life, to give people the tools to naturally achieve optimal bone health. Margie is the host of the Happy Bones, Happy Life podcast and the Natural Approaches to Osteoporosis and Bone Health Summit. And thank you so much for joining us, Margie.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, same here. Glad that you could join us. And why don't we start out by giving your background? How did you start helping people improve their bone health to have healthy bones, happy life?
Well, it was really interesting because I'm a physical therapist and my area of expertise is orthopedic. So working with people with back pain, neck pain, head and neck, TMJ. And then I moved from Chicago to New Jersey and I was working in my own private practice. And a group of doctors asked me if I'd see their patients with osteoporosis. And this is way back. And it wasn't, there wasn't even a lot out at that point in time. And so I said, sure. And I was absolutely mortified by what I saw. Well-intentioned people were, and at this point I was just working as a physical therapist. And I was just really so upset because well-intentioned individuals, the doctor said they had to exercise, but then they didn't have guidance. They would look, they didn't know where to go, or they didn't really get specifics and they had no idea. And so they were actually doing exercises. They found them at that time, it wasn't the internet. They found them through books or magazines or whatever, or their trainer. And they were doing exercises that actually increased their risk of fractures. And I just thought, it was very upsetting to me. So at that point, I got really involved. I got involved at the state level, the national level. That's when I wrote my book. I just said, you know what? I need to get involved here because people need guidance. So that's what got me started. And then fast forward, I had a son who had diabetes. I saw how food played such an important role in his condition. And that's when I went back to school, studied nutrition, became a health coach. And I've always taught my patients happiness. I've seen that there's a real correlation between happiness and chronic pain, and the same thing with osteoporosis. So that's how I got to do what I do.
All right, wonderful. Well, why don't we jump into some of the common causes of osteopenia, osteoporosis?
So for a lot of people, for women, a lot of times it's menopause and the reduction in estrogen. So that's something that just as people age, they lose bone, which is why it's so important. People think this is an older person's issue, but really every age, because the more bone we have, it's sort of like a bank as a kid, the more we can draw on later on. But then there are lots of root causes. And I know this is something that you're big into. But all sorts of things, like if there's any, certain medications, malabsorption, any problems with the gut and people aren't getting their nutrients, they can have micronutrient deficiency. That's a big one that I see. Also, in terms of environmental toxins, stress, inflammation, when people have different inflammation, just chronic inflammation, it's going to affect their bones. So I think this is something missed. Like there's so many underlying root causes. And oftentimes, people are treated with just a Band-Aid and not looking at these underlying causes that need to be dealt with in terms of, in terms of a person getting better and really improving their bones and overall health. And also people who are inactive, just people, and that's so common today's day and age where people are just sitting. And so there's lots of different reasons, again, certain medications, certain, thyroid too, and that's your area.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk a little bit about thyroid. How about medications? What are some of the common medications? I think PPIs, correct, are one of them.
Yes, and that's a big one because so many people are on PPIs, the proton pump inhibitors. And what that is, that's the Nexium, that's the Tums, anything blocking the acid. And that's a problem because, and they've been shown, there's, studies that show that people who are on these medications that block the acid actually have a significant increased risk of fractures and osteoporosis. So there's a big correlation, but also that just shows when we reduce stomach acid that we need that stomach acid. And so many people are on that, and it was never meant to be long term. So I think that's something that people need to know of if they're on that not to just get off, work with your healthcare provider, but there are other alternatives in terms of it. Even if you had to be on an acid blocking medication, which some people do for ulcers or different things, there are some other ones. They're called the tricyclic, and not the tricyclic, but there's some different ones, such as the Tagamet and the Pepsid AC, that don't affect the bone. But for in general, the PPIs are a big reason, and so many people are on that. So that's one. The other one and a lot of people know about that, but the one that's so interesting and people don't know about are antidepressants. And it's not something that the doctor will typically say, oh, I'm putting you on this antidepressant. And just so you know, one of the side effects is reduced bone density as well as increased fracture risk. It's something that's not usually talked about. But yet anything, the SSRIs, anything dealing with the serotonin is going to affect the bone density. And they've done studies on that. So I think that's something really important, because a lot of times people are put on them and they stay on them. They feel better. They just decide to stay on them. So I think that's something people need to know about, that can significantly reduce their bone density and, increase their risk of fractures and osteoporosis. So that's a big one. Another one that is, another category is any of the steroids, any of the corticosteroids that people are on for asthma, for inflammation, different things that even a shorter term, dose of that can affect your bones. And let's say, and then even the, for cancer treatments, the aromatase inhibitors as well, and people who are on that for a period of time. So, there's more categories as well. And we can talk about thyroid. If people are on too much thyroid hormone, in terms of that can actually increase what happens in the bone is there's two things going on. It's sort of like build and repair, and our body, the bone we have, doesn't just stay there. What our body does to keep our bone nice and healthy is it gets rid of old bone and it adds new bone. So it sort of, throws away the old bone and builds new bone. And what happens if there's too much thyroid hormone or hyperthyroidism, as you well know, is that it overdoes it. And so it gets rid of, it's called the osteoclast. Those are the breakdown cells. There's too many breakdown cells. And so it offsets the balance. We're breaking down more bone than we're building up. So that's a big one that, if it's not managed correctly, really can affect bone health. Or even if people have, hypothyroidism and they're taking too much of the medication, or as well. So that can affect your bone.
Okay, good point. So yeah, with hyperthyroidism, which I see a lot of people with hyperthyroidism graves, and that of course can affect bone density. But what you're saying also, if someone has hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, and they're taking thyroid hormone replacement, whether it's levothyroxine or desiccated thyroid, if they're taking too much, that could also have a negative effect on bone density, correct?
Yes, and even they found that hypothyroidism, because you need, if your thyroid hormones aren't balanced, if you're not, if you have Hashimoto's, first of all, the inflammation itself, the autoimmunity can be affecting your bones, just like it can affect, so many different things. But also you need the right amount of thyroid hormone for building bone as well. So it really works, both areas can be affecting bone.
Yeah, I think when I was doing, because I have written some articles in the past where the bone quality, like thyroid hormone is very important when it comes to bone quality. So if you don't have sufficient amount of thyroid hormone, that could definitely decrease the bone quality, and over time also can increase the susceptibility of fracture. So um,
Yeah, and that's a good point you brought up, because a lot of people, they get the DEXA, the bone density test, and it just has a number. And that number has nothing. It just says how much bone is there. So it's quantity. It has nothing to do with quality. And I think that's so important, because you can have two people with the exact same bone density test, and one could fall and not fracture, and one's like chalk, where they just So I think that matters so much. And that's such a good point that you brought up. And there is a test that, just to let people know about, called the trabecular bone scoring, the TBS, which a lot of people don't know about, but it's just software added to the bone density that some places have now that can give you more information on your bone quality as well as the bone density.
Oh, wow. So what type of test is that?
It's called trabecular, it's called TBS, or trabecular bone score, and not that many places have it, unfortunately. I hope it's gonna become more popular, and, because I guess a lot of doctors don't order it, and it may not be covered by insurance, but it's just software. So it's just software that when you get your
Mm.
regular bone density, some centers have this, and it's incredibly helpful information, because not only does it give you the density, but the quality, which is so important. And it's something that, a lot of times isn't even thought about, but yet it's going to make the difference if you fracture or not. And that's, that's huge in terms of in terms of just your bone health.
Yeah. So is that it's not an actual scan then, from what I understand?
Yeah, it's just software that goes on the regular bone density that they can even take if the place has it. They can even look at a bone density. You can't mix places, unfortunately, and that's an issue because it's the DEXA test is just not that accurate. And so you can't take the findings of one center and bring it to another. You have to stay at the same place. So sometimes you have to balance out what's more important, and usually it's staying at the same place. But for anyone getting it for the first time, or just check with your center, I'm a big believer in this test. I've just, it just gives you additional information.
Okay, good to know. How about stress? What impact does stress have
Oh,
on bone density?
I'm so glad you asked this question, because people come to see me and they're so worried. Are they doing the right exercises? Are they eating the right foods? But they don't realize that the stress itself is such a problem, because stress is your body's own steroid. Cortisol is your body's steroid, and it does the same thing as being on steroids. And there have been studies done, both animal and in humans, that show that increased cortisol reduces bone density. So it really makes a difference. And every single person I work with, I really teach them, again, life is stressful. So you can't just say, oh, get rid of stress. Doesn't happen. But you can learn techniques so that you're more resilient, and so that the stress isn't going to topple you over. And it's actually my favorite thing that I do. I teach people to reduce stress as well as increase happiness, which they've shown that people who are content with life and happier have increased bone density. So it sort of all goes together. But, I actually look at osteoporosis as an opportunity. People find out, and it's not something that you feel oftentimes. You're 50, you get a bone density, and then you're like, oh no, I have osteoporosis, and you conjure up these images of your whole life's shot, ruined. You can't enjoy all the activities you did playing with grandchildren. It's very scary. But I look at it as an opportunity to examine your life, like what's missing, or what maybe am I, like, for example, stress, am I a real stressed out person? Well, where can I improve upon it? Am I a couch potato? And then when you do all these things that help the bones, it's so great, because your whole life gets better. And, you're in your 80s and you're lifting things, and you've never felt better in your life. So that's how I sort of look at it. It's that, look at it as an opportunity to see where you may have issues that you need to deal with, because the bones aren't in isolation, and I know that's something that you practice as well. It's not like one part of the body, it all goes
Mhm.
together. And so, when something's wrong with the bones, usually there's other areas as well.
Yep.
So yeah, so stress is so important. And I just think it's something that every person needs to just stop and sort of see where they are. It's interesting because I I've always been a happy person, but, in physical therapy, you can get really busy. And I remember just, like, working like crazy, like shoving my lunch down and different things. And one day I decided to take a meditation, like an 8-week meditation program. I did this John Kabat-Zinn program, and I got a speeding ticket. The first class, we didn't do much, but the second class we were doing, I got a speeding ticket on the way to meditation. And that was the best thing that happened, because it hit me in the head that you're not practicing what you preach. And so since that day, which was around 11 years ago, I've just made these practices such an important part of my life. And it's completely changed everything. I just can't say enough about how it's helped me personally as well as everybody I work with. So very big thing.
All right, so yet another reason why people should incorporate some type of mind-body medicine, or something else to help to manage stress. Like you said, there's only so much we could do about the actual stressors, but when it comes to stress management, there's definitely a lot we can do.
Absolutely. And it's the benefits. I'm sure you've seen this as well in terms of health. I just can't get over it actually, how big a role this plays. And it also helps your digestion, just different things. Because people, the body thinks you're running from a tiger and shuts down digestion. So for the bones, if digestion is shut down, we're not absorbing our nutrients. We may be eating properly, but just doing that. So all sorts of things with reducing our stress and learning the mind body techniques are so helpful.
All right, how about the gut microbiome? Can you talk about that and the impact of bone density?
Yes, and they've done research on that the composition of the gut microbiome, I mean, that's new research is coming out more and more, how it can really affect your bone density. So it's something, the gut is just such, as everybody knows, it's the seed, it can be the root of everything. But especially when it comes to your bones, people, that's one of the first things I have people work on. You can't, oftentimes people will be, they just say, okay, I see your bone density, let's go on a medication, not realizing this person has major issues. So I think it's very good to have it evaluated, see what you can do to improve, and really, eat as best you can your prebiotics, your postbiotics, just to do things to really help the gut microbiome, as well as get it evaluated too, because there are people who have issues and that's going to definitely affect your bones.
All right.
In terms of the other thing with the gut that I find the biggest thing, this is interesting, that I see
Mhm.
in my practice is food sensitivities. And one that is just, I see it time and time again, is gluten that has played such a role. I can't even tell you how many people have gotten off gluten and really improved their bone density in their bones. And, people just, every doctor will, most doctors who deal with osteoporosis, every doctor, the endocrinologist, will test for celiac disease, but they don't go any further. And that's a real problem because celiac disease only affects a small portion. But anyone who has non celiac gluten sensitivity or problems with gluten also can have significant inflammation and significant problems with their bones because they're not getting the nutrients. And it's just not something that is routinely done. So I think everybody should be personally, I think everybody should be tested for that as well, because it's very common and it's something that really needs to be evaluated in the whole scheme of looking at why you might be losing bone.
Hmm, that's interesting too. How about the dairy controversy? Because, dairy also, like gluten, some people will say avoid dairy, it's inflammatory. And then, of course, there are others when it comes to bone health that will say you need to have dairy to have healthy bones. So, can you talk a little about dairy and maybe all other foods other than dairy that you would recommend that might be able to help with bone density?
That's such a good question because it's true. You'll watch television, and years ago they had the milk mustache, and that's what people are told. Oh, drink your milk, you'll have strong bones. But that's not what's been found. The countries that have the most dairy do not have the lowest incidence of osteoporosis, just the opposite. So there is not a correlation with increasing your dairy and osteoporosis at all. And from so many people, dairy is inflammatory. And so that's not what you want to do. You certainly don't want to increase your inflammation. And so that's not what I tell people, oh, just increase your dairy. And there are a lot of people who can't tolerate dairy, myself included. I really don't have, I have very little dairy, if any. And, and so, but there's lots of other ways to get, for some people, they can tolerate it and, healthy dairy, organic and pasture raised, some they can certainly tolerate. But for other people who can't, there's lots of other ways you can get your calcium. I'm a big believer in the leafy greens, and some of the ones that people don't know about are collard greens. You can sort of use that as a wrap. They have like 250 milligrams of calcium, per cup. Kale, bok choy, some really good ones. And a lot of people think, oh, spinach, that's like a great, but spinach has spinach has oxalic acid, so you're actually not
Yeah.
going to be getting the calcium from that. Not that you can't have spinach, but just don't use that. Sardines are a great way to get calcium. So there's lots of other ways. Chia seeds, there's definitely ways that you can get calcium outside of the dairy. So it's not just increase your dairy. Yeah, at all. I don't believe in that. And I think a lot of people need to appreciate how inflammatory dairy is. So it's one of the things I also oftentimes, not always, have people either eliminate or test for because it can be an issue as well. We certainly want to get rid of anything that causes inflammation.
Yeah. Is broccoli also high in calcium?
Broccoli's good. Yeah, broccoli's good. It's not huge, but it's certainly a very good thing to take. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So you mentioned inflammation. So
Yeah.
which is huge because it's not just the foods. And we mentioned stress, which, that could lead to inflammation, a pro-inflammatory response. I mean, there's so many things that can cause inflammation. So that's something I mean, as a healthcare practitioner, a health coach, physical therapist, that's something. It's not just diet, not just stress management, but I assume there's other things you look into just to try to
Yeah,
reduce inflammation.
absolutely. I mean, there's a whole major workup when it comes to osteoporosis. And I really believe it's so important. I think this root cause piece cannot, as I said before, it's like putting a band-aid on it. So if you have, yeah, so I like to see in the blood work the homocysteine level and the C-reactive protein, the sensitive one, yeah. So I think both
High
those
sensitivity,
high
yeah, high
sensitivity.
sensitivity CRP, yeah.
I think both of those, and that's just in the regular lab work, can be ordered by like any doctor. And, it's not anything special when you get your blood work, but it really gives it gives tremendous information. Are you having, because a lot of people don't know. I know even just today, actually, this morning, I spoke to someone who got diagnosed with very low bone density, and her numbers were awful in terms of her homocysteine and C-reactive protein. She didn't realize, she doesn't know. So they're trying to figure out what could be causing it. And but yes, so I think that's very important, that to see, is there underlying inflammation? It can be for many reasons. It can be infection. It could be food sensitivities that will cause that. So lots of reasons. And that's why I'm such a big believer in working with a functional medicine or integrative, or someone like you, working with someone who deals with this, so you can really delve in and see. Because osteoporosis, unlike some other things, let's say you come in with eczema or your stomach is hurting or something, you'll know if you're getting better. But with bones, you don't know right away. It's not as though the bone density test is that sensitive. So, and oftentimes though, people do have other issues that we can see if that's improving. But that's why it's so important to really initially figure out what could be the root causes, because you don't want to miss anything and deal with them. But yes, inflammation, people who have rheumatoid arthritis, that certainly autoimmune, anything inflammatory because of autoimmune issues is going to affect the bones as well. So yes, it's a big reason, and it's something that needs to be taken into consideration and often isn't.
All right. Well, thanks for that. Calcium again. So getting back to not the food, but supplements, because there's some people that might ask and might be wondering, listening to this, well, how about if I could just take a calcium supplement? And so what are your thoughts about
Yeah, this is
supplemental calcium?
such an interesting situation, because what I see is that the calcium is one of those situations where more is not better. And so what I see is that people are getting calcium in their diet, and then maybe they've been told, it's so crazy because in the United States, the numbers, what's recommended is, for anyone over 50, is 1,200, milligrams of calcium. And so in terms of other places, it's like 700. And so if they're put on 1,200 and they're getting some in your food, that's more. So I see people are getting too much calcium because they oftentimes think that's the panacea. Oh, let me just take calcium supplements, and they take the calcium plus what they're getting in their food. And so it's too much. And there's been research, nothing 100% conclusive that we can say, oh, yes, for sure. But there's been some research on when there's increased calcium like that over, the 1,200, that people have had increased kidney stones, increased cardiovascular issues. So even it's not called the American, it used to be called the National Osteoporosis Foundation, but now it's called the National bone health. It's really great. They've like changed the name, realizing bone health really at all ages. It's not just osteoporosis, but the recommendation is get as much as you can from food and only supplement if necessary. So that's sort of what I believe, that see what you can get from your food. More is not better. But the key thing here is that, and this is what's missing. This is what, again, I work with all sorts of doctors. Most doctors will recommend, calcium, vitamin D, which is so essential. And they do, it's very important for everybody listening. Make sure you have, it's called the 25 hydroxy vitamin D, so that you see what your level is. Don't guess this, because this is so important. And we've seen now how it really has been helping with so many things, and how critical our vitamin D level is. And so, anyway, so yeah, so vitamin D, calcium, they'll tell you, and exercise. Not so specific sometimes, but the other thing is there's some more things that are beyond critical. So to absorb that calcium, yes, you need the vitamin D, but there's two other. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I believe in eating the rainbow, and you need a whole symphony. Really, it's not just a few vitamins are going to do the trick. You just need to eat everything. However, the key ones for osteoporosis are magnesium. So many people are deficient in magnesium, and you really need at least, years ago we had a 1-to-1 ratio. So the same amount of calcium we had to magnesium. Now we have, people are so deficient in magnesium. It's just so important for so many different, so many different of your activities in your body, and so many different reactions. But so at least minimum, half the amount of calcium, magnesium, minimum. And then the other thing that's so important is vitamin K2. And vitamin K2 takes that calcium and makes sure it gets into the bones and not into the soft tissue. So that's something that's so very important. And there's a food called natto that's a Japanese food that's very, very high in one type of K2 called MK7. And they found in those areas of Japan, there's a huge reduction in, in osteoporosis. So anyway, yeah. So those, I would say, were the key ones. There's a lot more in terms of, manganese, boron, zinc, enough protein. There's a lot of other things in terms of supplements, but not protein supplement, but but anyway, I just think eating from the rainbow, I think all the things, an anti-inflammatory diet is so important, and just not the calcium by itself. Try to get it from your food, but if not, then you can supplement. But the one supplement that I don't like is calcium carbonate, because that actually reduces the acid. That's like Tums and things like that. So that would not be my favorite.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm glad you brought up the K2. I always have,
Yeah.
whenever I have someone take a D3 supplement, I pretty much make sure they take the K2 as well, for the reason you mentioned. So thank you for that. And you said you do recommend for people to test that 25 hydroxy. Pretty much you have all of your clients go through that.
Typically they've had it. And maybe it's just who I work with here. Really, all the doctors order that. So anyone that, I guess when people are referred to me, they already have osteoporosis or osteopenia for the most part. So that's been part of the workup. Like typically that's part of the routine workup, is the 25 hydroxy test. So yeah, so typically that's already done. I don't think there's anyone that hasn't had that's been referred, because I just think
Yeah.
that's part of the medical workup.
Yep. I agree. I think it is important.
And the other thing,
And
I guess, let me just mention one other thing. The parathyroid hormone, that's so, and I'm doing the summit, and I had a doctor who's a parathyroid surgeon come on, and she's on the summit. It was just so fascinating, because so often she said this is missed. And if someone has a tumor on their parathyroid, I'm not going to go in detail, but that can significantly affect your vitamin D, your vitamin D and your calcium, and huge reason for osteoporosis. And she was saying how so often the doctors are taught in medical school that if your calcium on your blood work is a little bit high, not to worry about it, no big deal. So she talks about that a lot on my summit. But my point is that's just something that's very important on the blood work for people to know about the calcium level. And that calcium level doesn't affect the calcium you're getting in your body, but it's just a matter of it could be very important for the parathyroid hormone. But just something to make sure also that you have them look at the parathyroid hormone, which typically the doctors should who work with osteoporosis. But I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, good point. Because a lot of people, they don't get as concerned if something's high, like especially like a nutrient. They're worried about something being low, and if calcium is too high, if it's high once, I'm not saying to overlook that, but definitely you at least want to retest. But you could also do a test for parathyroid hormone pretty easily in the blood. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. How about exercise? What impact can exercise have on improving bone health?
This is where I think we can all make such a difference because, first of all, the research has shown certain types of exercise can really increase bone density. I mean, there was a study called the Liftmore study that was done in Australia, and they took people who had osteoporosis or not, who had low bone density, and they put them through what you wouldn't think typically, serious weight training, not just minor. And they showed improvement in bone density. But the key thing here is safety. This was a supervised study. So I really don't believe just go out, turn on, find a video and start doing it because that's dangerous. As a physical therapist, if you're not in good posture, if you don't know what you're doing, you could really, really, really hurt yourself. So what I always say is if you can, and usually this is covered by insurance, get a referral. If the doctor says exercise, ask, can I have a referral to physical therapy at least once so that you can figure out what's best for you? They can look at if you have shoulder problems, hip problems, whatever, and really give you a custom exercise program. And that's my first thing. But regardless, exercise is so important. So the types of exercise that increase bone density are resistance. When the muscles contracting against a resistance, it says, hey, we need, it's like tugging on the bone saying, hey, we need more bone here. So strength training is really important. And that's what they've really shown makes a difference. Again, it's not something I would start on my own unless you've been doing it for a while. It's something that I would make sure I worked with someone who was knowledgeable in osteoporosis. But for younger people, like make sure. And the other thing is high impact. Again, this depends. If you already have osteoporosis, I'd make sure you check what level you're at, with the people that you're working with. But for people younger people they found jumping high impact forces really increase bone density. And so exercise at any stage can make such a big difference. And that's what I've seen. It's so incredible. But even if you can't do it, even if you can whatever you can do, you could always do balance exercises. I mean, I think everybody should do those all day anyway, not all day, but because if you don't use it, you lose it. That's both with exercise and also with balance. But balance, by improving your balance, you're not going to fall. And that's what's causing the fractures and the problems for the most part. So I think everybody can do balance exercises, and that would be Tai Chi, standing on one foot, doing stabilizing. There's lots of different things that I love. Tai Chi, that's one of my favorites. But even just shifting your weight, there's just a lot of things people can do. And the good thing is that when you do it, it's amazing. It's just amazing the difference. So I think that this is an area everybody, even if you're at high risk, even if you're on medications, whatever, every single person can do the right exercises. I mean, that's what I see. People think, a lot of people say, oh, I'll just walk 10 miles. Yes, it's good to walk. And they did show in the Nurses' Health Study, a big study, that they reduced your risk of hip fractures, but that's not what's actually increasing bone density. So, it's the strength training and it's lower reps. It's not doing 50 reps. It's doing maybe 8 to 10 reps at a weight. So this is an area and I think I told you the summit that I'm doing, I have physical therapists who are fantastic, who are the people that teach the physical therapists, actually demonstrating safe exercises, posture, what's so important. So I think that that's just critical. And so I'm very passionate about that. And I've seen it. I've seen people even twice a week when they're doing the right exercises, just not only improve their bone density, but improve their strength and activity levels. And they feel so, you feel empowered. You feel really great when you exercise and improve your strength.
Thank you for that, especially the balance, because I really think about that. I do talk to patients at times about, increasing, doing like weight bearing exercises, especially again with I deal with a lot of hyperthyroid patients, and but like you said, you also want to be cautious even with that. If you don't have, you might need to work with someone for that as well. But the balance is yeah, that makes a lot of sense to just do what you can to prevent from falling in the future.
And it's so amazing when people, I work with the state of New Jersey and on several, we have several state programs on exercise. And these are people who have osteoporosis, people in their 70s, even they're older. And by just doing these several balance exercises, it's been amazing. And people have said how, they felt they were going to fall. And when they're doing like weight shifting, when you're, going forward and back, which is part of Tai Chi, they said they didn't. It's just like I can't even tell you how many people have commented that they really feel these exercises have prevented them from falling. So it's not hard. It's just a matter of making that, you can even do part of it. You can throw these in during your day. That's what's so exciting.
All right, again, wonderful. And so the last question I haven't had for you, Margie, is I've had a number of broken bones in the past, and actually last year, or early last year, my wife broke her, pretty much her big toe, and it was slow to heal. And so, what I guess my question is, if you have any bone speed, anything to speed up the healing process, whether it's supplements, or she did try cold laser and she thought that was beneficial. So I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit and see if you had any other
Yeah.
suggestions.
I always make sure that people are getting the nutrients, so I would really up your multivitamin. You make sure you're getting the calcium, the magnesium, the boron, the zinc, everything that builds bone, the K2, making sure you're getting enough protein. We didn't talk about that, but that's a lot of people think, oh, too much protein isn't good, but they found there is a Goldilocks, but you need enough. And so a lot of people as they get older really aren't getting that much protein. So in terms of, for bone healing, so I would say, yes, making sure you're just getting nutrients. And, if you need to supplement, this is when I definitely would make sure if there's any question to, just make sure you are getting the bone building nutrients. So that's number one. Number two, there is some electrical stimulation, that if people are not healing does speed up. I mean, they've done some research on different electrical stimulation units that can help. They've done those with non-union fractures. They've done so, the orthopedists do have different things to help with fracture healing. So I would say the nutrition, and then, maybe get the electrical stimulation.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. You shared a lot of valuable information. Greatly appreciate it, Margie. And so first of all, just if anybody has any questions, definitely feel free to post them, and we will get to them in just a couple of minutes. But if you could, Margie, if you could let people know where they can find you and where they can learn more about you.
Oh, sure. Just go to my website, margiebissinger.com. And the podcast is there, the Happy Bones, Happy Life podcast.
And what's the name of that summit? I'm going to include a link
Okay,
in the.
yes. So I'm so excited about this. You have no idea. I've wanted to do this for several years and it just worked out. So it's called the Natural Approaches to Osteoporosis and Bone Health Summit. And I have 46 experts, and in different areas, But what I wanted people to do is I really wanted people to get tools. So the physical therapist, I actually have them showing the exercises. I have them showing like one person's showing, she's actually a personal trainer who deals with osteoporosis, who actually worked with Jackie Onassis and Carolyn Kennedy, but she's showing amazing balance exercises. And one of the physical therapists, Sherry Betts, really shows you exactly how to do the exercises. So I have people, and so I have physical therapists really demonstrating and explaining the exercises in detail. I just sort of skimmed over it here. I have all sorts of people who deal with this. That's their expertise, functional medicine doctors. practitioners who work with osteoporosis, what's worked, what hasn't worked, people talking about the foods, how to make foods, how to, what do we really need to eat, as well as stress. Certain people, I wanted to give people tools on this. So people, not only do they talk about the stress reduction, but they actually have you go through processes. And so, yeah, so it's really full. And even Chinese medicine, going through what we can do from that realm to help our bones. So there's just so much information. It's sort of like a smorgasbord that you can sort of pick. But also, even signing up, I wrote this exercise book. So that's one of the free gifts when people sign up, just to get people started. It's just a very basic what you can do easily, because I don't believe in overwhelm. So I want people to get things gradually. So there's so there's lots of free gifts. There's just lots and lots of tools. And that's what I wanted to do, because unfortunately, this information is not out there. And it's not like every person deals with osteoporosis from a functional medicine viewpoint. And I wanted to show people what else is possible. And so that's sort of what's put together here. It's not on medication at all, because that wasn't the point of it. It was to show so even if someone's on medication, absolutely come, because this all, you need all of this to build your bones. So it just goes into really every aspect of bone health, with all sorts of tools and things that people can put into their life. So I'm really excited about it, because just to get all this information in one place and out to people. And it's free. People can listen for free. They don't have to pay for this.
Yeah, so they might as well take advantage of it, because I think this is information that not just people with hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism can benefit, but pretty much everyone, because a lot of people are just faced with bone density problems as we get older. And so whatever age you are, if you're younger, of course, you want to prevent, and hopefully.
It's such a good point, because that's really what I believe. I believe that the next generation, if we start early, I mean, think of the kids right now, they're sitting like couch potatoes, not eating a good diet. So it's just setting them up for poor bone health throughout life. So if we deal with the kids now, and I have a pediatrician who really talks about, and she does a whole thing about milk, because, why that's not what to get for the kids. So she does a whole talk on what to feed your kids. And I also have a whole program called $1 Million Bones that someone talks about for teens, what to do, because this is where we're going to make the impact. We're going to change the trajectory of osteoporosis if we start young, because 80% of your bone, 80 to 90% women have by 18 and men have by 20. So so it's really all ages. It's not as though you wait till you're older. Every age, there's things that can be done. And that's, I think, what's so great. And just putting bone health on the map, like why not enjoy your years later? Why have to worry about fractures? It's just not necessary when there's so much that can be done.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And again, I will include the link in the show notes. And for those on Facebook, I will include the link in the groups that this is streaming to. So I'll get the link in later. And again, thank you so much, Margie. Appreciate you taking the time to share this wonderful information.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, so let's see what questions people have. Again, if there's any questions for Margie, preferably related to bone health, we do have a Happy New Year from Stay in Your Lane. Happy New Year. And Boston, I would just say, send an email to info@naturalendocrinesolutions.com, and we could send you some resources related to Graves' disease. But then Linda, how you doing, Linda? Does calcium citrate excuse me, my cold's catching up to me here. Does calcium citrate contribute to kidney stones?
No, but in general, the research has shown, I don't think they were so specific, but no, I mean, calcium citrate's fine, but I wouldn't have excess calcium. Any excess calcium could cause that. So again, you don't want to have over the 1,200 milligrams altogether in terms of, but no, it's not, not in particular calcium citrate.
All right. You said calcium carbonate that you wouldn't, that's the one
Right.
calcium you don't recommend. when you do and again, I don't know if you recommend calcium at all, but is there a specific form like calcium malate or calcium citrate?
You know, the one that I actually like is calcium microcrystal hydroxyapatite. I never pronounce it properly. MC. Yeah, I never pronounce it properly. That's the one I like because it's really, it has all the different, but there's other ones that are okay. I'm not opposed to some of the other ones. Just I don't like the calcium carbonate, but the microcrystal, I never hydroxyapatite. Yeah, MCHA. Yeah, that's the one that I typically, if someone really doesn't have enough, I mean, we need enough. So if someone doesn't have enough, that will be part of it. But I try to have people get as much as they can first from their food and then supplement as needed.
Makes sense. All right. In Boston, you are welcome. All right. Well, it doesn't look like there's any, I guess, last call for questions here. If there's any other questions, let us know. If not,
I can also answer happiness questions if they want.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap things up here. But well, again, thank you so much, Margie, for taking the time here and answering the few questions we had. And again, looking forward to myself tuning into some of the summit as well. And hope some of the listeners do so as well. I'm sure we'll get a good amount of listeners. I'm going to let people know again, not only through this live stream, but this is also going to be uploaded to my podcast, YouTube. I think it's important. There's a lot of summits out there, and I'm not saying all of them are important in different ways, but again, bone health is important, just I think for everyone, but then also, like I said, for thyroid conditions, it's important. But then also, you just look at, I've mentioned the fracture history of myself and my wife and all that. So again, we all want to have healthy bones and want to anyway, so I'll leave it at that. But again, so check out Margie's summit.
Can I just say one thing I forgot to tell them?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, one thing. I also, since I teach happiness, I wanted to infuse that in the summit. So they also get, if they sign up, a 7-day happiness habits journal. And then every morning I do a quick teaching a happiness habit and then introducing the day's speakers. So besides getting bones, you'll actually be able to increase your base level of happiness by attending the summit, because there's some, and there's also a whole talk on happiness as well. But yeah, so I just wanted to let people know, if they do sign up, be prepared to wake up happier after the summit.
All right. So every day there'll be a lot.
Yeah. I did like a 10-minute. I did a quick every day. There's a journal that comes with, they just get for free when they sign up. It's a happiness habits journal. And because I really believe that's the habits that increase happiness. It doesn't matter where you start, but if you start adding these habits, it's amazing what happens. And so each day I teach, just a very easy habit. And then it's in the journal. And I do that before I introduce the speaker. So every day it's a quick, 5 to 10 minute little video that's available every day. You can watch it any time of the day you want. But each day there's also, a little happiness component, because I think it's so important.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thanks for letting people know. And, that component alone, very well might make it worth just attending. But of course, most people will be attending for the bone health, information. But hey, we all want to be happy as well. So
yes, and it's possible for everybody. Don't even if you're a glass half neck, everything doesn't matter where you start. That's the good part.
Yep. All right. Well, looks like still no more questions, so we will let Margie go. But thanks again, Margie, and hope you have a great day and weekend ahead, and best of luck with the summit.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure being with you.
Yeah, same here. Take care now, and take care, everyone.